Raising your character to their max potential requires a strategic approach, and there's 3 important investment tips you can use to achieve this. Even though there's a clear difference between someone who's a light spender or even a free-to-play player compared to some of the highest paying customers that are often called whales for their substantial in-game spending habits, there's one thing no one can buy at the moment, which are of course the weekly boss materials. And one of the most challenging things when it comes to these bosses aren't really their offensive capabilities, but the rewards they provide. And there's a couple of reasons why you need to be aware of the potential setbacks you can get yourself into, especially if you don't come in prepared with long-term strategy. First of all, the drops you can get range from very inconsistent to almost overabundant. There's also no pity rate like you would get with wishing for characters, and you could go on for weeks without obtaining these materials. And just to be clear, if you're someone who's new to the game, these legendary boss materials will be needed to level your character talents past level 6 and provide some of the biggest power boosts in the game, ranging from your typical damage increase to better healing, or maybe even increasing the time of your target's incapacitation. So these materials are a pretty big deal and are arguably the most exciting part of every new week you start in Genshin Impact, since you have the chance of upgrading your favorite character's talents. But because of the randomness of these materials, you need to exercise caution with how you're going to spend them. And second of all, now that we have gotten 3rd weekly boss, it seems to be we didn't get another opportunity to get more of the same materials, and instead, this new boss fight only provides new materials that are only required by the 1.1 characters, at least as of making this video. So make sure to take both of these warnings into consideration. The drops are inconsistent, and the new bosses that get added into the game seem to only drop different materials instead of the ones that are already there. This leaves us to the question, what is the best case scenario for spending these materials? Well, for starters, the easiest choice of course would be to only invest first into your main damage dealer, or at least someone that you consider to spend a long time using on the field. This way, once you invest into them your precious boss materials, the more time you spend with them, the more valuable their skills are, especially at higher talent levels. And before you spend these materials, make sure to pick the skills that you see yourself using the most often, or if it's something that's extremely valuable. For example, Fischl's elemental skill is considered to be one of the best support abilities in the game, and if you choose to use her as your backup damage dealer, it's highly recommended to first invest into her elemental skill. It's also important to note that splitting these boss materials between 2 characters can be a very risky investment, since you're left at the mercy of randomness, so the safest choice would be to first focus on raising one character's talents instead. All in all, the weekly boss materials can be inconsistent and lead to scarcity, which in return could set back your talents, especially if you decide to split these materials between several characters, so it's better to just focus on improving the most important talent as much as possible before moving on to your next character. There's a lot of potential you could be missing out on by ignoring what's already in front of you. As previously mentioned, due to the randomness of weekly boss material drops, you could end up with a lot of materials that are currently not usable with any of your active party members. But since collecting and raising new characters is one of the biggest selling points in Genshin Impact, you could take advantage of the unusable weekly boss drops and funnel them into your chosen characters. Of course, raising new characters is an expensive investment, but one thing you will notice is that you can pretty much level anything without too much constraint, since the biggest bottleneck is the resin itself. But if you have, for example, 7 Dvalin's plumes in your backpack from months of playing the game, it could be a good idea to finally raise a character that uses these materials, since you'll easily get to power up their talents. And this investment strategy could also be a great way to decide which characters you want to use, especially if you prefer better performance above anything else. Of course, do not invest into someone that you completely dislike playing, since the aim of the game is to have fun. So if you ever end up in a situation where you keep getting a lot of the same weekly boss materials, but none of your party members need it, check out if any of the characters you already own can use this material, and if you see yourself having fun with them, it might be a good idea to use those weekly boss materials on them instead. Even though we already established that the weekly boss materials are some of the most scarce resources in the entire game, there's one more item that's even more rare than anything else, and that's of course the Crown of Sagehood. And the only way it was possible to obtain this precious item was from the Unreconciled Stars event, which was first introduced in the 1.1 update. As of making this video, there haven't been any opportunities to obtain this item, and only one of them exists in the entire game. And this item is needed to level your character's talents past level 9, which is already a very expensive investment for your character. So you can probably imagine how important this item is for long-term strategy, and so far there's only been one opportunity to obtain it, and unless MiHoYo makes this accessible outside of special events, you need to decide what's the best way to spend this crown. And there are 2 best case scenarios. One would be to wait and observe just how often will we get the opportunity to obtain one of these crowns again, while the other option would be to invest only in your main damage dealer, especially if it's someone you're using for all types of content like the endgame domains or the Spiral Abyss. And other than these two recommendations, it's also important you always use the opportunity to obtain these crowns whenever possible, since this is literally the only thing that's preventing your character from achieving their max potential. But to summarize, there's no bigger enemy in the game than the weekly boss drops, which are heavily randomized, and it's in your best interest to be careful with where you decide to spend these resources. So one good way to do this would be to first focus on completing one character's most important talents before moving on to the next one. However, if you do end up collecting a lot of weekly boss materials that you aren't investing into anyone from your roster, it might be a good idea to reconsider if you want to raise someone with powerful talents, especially if you like them on a personal level. Finally, the most precious resource in the game is Crown of Sagehood, so it's best to either save it up and see how often it shows up in other events, or only invest into your main damage dealer so you can get the best value from the most rarest item in the game. Let us know in the comments how lucky or unlucky you're getting with the weekly boss drops. Also, don't forget to subscribe and enable the bell notification on, as well as make sure to gently press the like button. Thank you for watching us.